Crypto Trader is proudly brought to you by Element, a full-service investment bank for the digital token capital markets.
The Bitcoin cash split sends markets tumbling, but are these wars hash wars or ego wars? Tonight we speak to both sides to get their view. Blood on the markets, but is this capitulation? The SEC makes a decisive move against ICOs, and will crypto benefit from Black Friday? Blood, and more blood as the crypto markets lose 1/3 of their value in less than 3 days. I'm Crypto Man Ran, and tonight, like every other night, despite the turmoil here at CNBC, we're all in on crypto. Let's take a look at the biggest stories making crypto news headlines. Crypto markets saw their biggest decline this year, falling over 30% in just 1 week. The total market cap went from $210 billion down to $140 billion. Bitcoin went from $6,500 to a low of $4,000 on Coinbase. The decline was triggered on the eve of the Bitcoin Cash chain split, when Dr. Craig Wright published a tweet that warned Bitcoin miners that if they switched to mine BCH, it would be deemed a declaration of war, and it would need to be funded by selling Bitcoin. He threatened that he would, quote, sell a lot, and went on to say that a Bitcoin price of $1,000 doesn't bother him. The Bitcoin Cash chain split then happened on November 15th, and the hash wars were due to begin, with both sides threatening to use mining power to get ahead and to take ownership of the chain and mine more blocks. But as the hash wars started, it sounded like it was all nothing but banter. Jihan Wu's camp, Bitcoin ABC, got ahead, and it seemed that Bitcoin SV was nowhere to be found. Bitcoin ABC then declared victory, and in true style, a day later, Dr. Craig Wright's Bitcoin SV reappeared with a boost of hash power. But it doesn't seem like it was enough hash power to have the longest chain. So, are these hash wars actually over? And who actually does control the Bitcoin Cash name and chain? With me on the line, I've got Roger Ver and Amaury Sachet from Bitcoin ABC. Roger, I'm gonna start with you. Talk me through your version of events in this hash war, and is there still a hash war going on?
Yeah, I think the hash war is all done and over with at this point. Right from the opening bell, the Bitcoin ABC implementation of Bitcoin Cash had substantially more hash rate than the Bitcoin SV implementation of Bitcoin Cash, and it's been that way the entire way through. And so there's already way more proof of work has been done on top of the Bitcoin ABC version of Bitcoin Cash than the Bitcoin SV version. So it's kind of done and over from my point of view at this point. In fact, Bitcoin.com never had any of our services go offline at all. Everything was up and fully operational the entire way through the whole time. And I think it did kind of turn out to be a bit like, other than the prices of every cryptocurrency going wild, other than that, it did turn out to be a bit like kind of like Y2K. Not really much of anything happened. There weren't any services outages other than people that took their stuff online just out of an abundance of caution. But as far as actual problems, there was no problem with Bitcoin Cash whatsoever the whole way through.
Roger, I'd hardly say Y2K. I mean, the markets have tanked. I have a whole lot of questions for you. Let's start off with the pre-fork banter, where Bitcoin SV was reported to have way more hash power going into the fork. What actually happened there? Did they have more hash power, or were they bluffing?
Obviously, they didn't have more hash power. So like BTC and BCH use the exact same hashing algorithm. Before the upgrade on Bitcoin Cash, there was around 4 exahashes on the BCH network and around 40 exahashes on the BTC network. But all the people like myself and Jihan and everybody else who care so deeply about making peer-to-peer electronic cash for the world with Bitcoin Cash, the instant the fork started, we made sure we had plenty of that hash rate. We popped right on over from the BTC network to the BCH network. So from the very first block, in fact, I think Bitcoin.com, I think we found like the first 5 blocks after the upgrade. We had more than 4,000 petahashes on our pool to help out with that. The amount of electricity required for that much electricity is more than the average power output of the Hoover Dam. So it's not some small amount of hash rate, we shift it around. But we have it there. It's still online right now today. We have it for as long as we need. It's kind of a shame because I would rather be using that hash rate to mine BTC at the moment, which I can then sell to buy more BCH. But, if Calvin and Craig want to play games and waste everybody's money and time, we can't stop them from doing that, but I can ask them to stop because it's wasting everybody's time and money. Let's get on with building, peer-to-peer electronic cash for the world. If they want to join us with Bitcoin Cash, that's fantastic. If they want to do that their own thing, it's their life and their money and time to do it with. So I'll support them in that. But don't go and kick over somebody else's sandcastle. Let everybody build the project they want to build. And, at least one of us will likely wind up with something that's beneficial to the whole world.
Now, Roger, as you talk about moving hash power from one place to another, I can't help but think that this all sounds very centralized. It sounds like between you, Jihan, Kelvin, and Craig, you control a big portion of the world's mining. And cryptocurrencies have often come under fire for being centralized, and specifically in the mining. Doesn't this highlight that issue?
I don't really think that that's an accurate description because there were dozens, if not hundreds of people involved in shifting this hash rate around. So there wasn't one, single person that came down from on high and said, make it so. It was all these people working together. People literally all across the entire planet came together to protect Bitcoin Cash and make sure they continues being peer-to-peer electronic cash for the world. So I don't think that's the case when it comes to any of these things. And the same with all the GPU miners. I mean, there's miners all over the world, but people can rent a bunch of it if they want or move a bunch of it. But it's all these people all around the world deciding what they want to do with the assets that they control or the hash rate that they control.
What percentage of the hash power is owned by you and Jihan?
I can't speak for Jihan. I don't know. And at the end of the day, anybody that has enough money can buy as much hash rate as they want, whether it's deploying new miners or buying existing miners out there. So I think at the moment on the Bitcoin Cash network, we have on the Bitcoin.com pool, maybe 30%, but of the global BTC and BCH hash rate, that's less than 5%, something like that. So.
Okay, now let's take a look at the actual fork. As the fork happened, we anticipated a big battle for hash power. But that wasn't the case. Instead, BTC ABC pulled ahead and BTC SV was nowhere to be found. Then all of a sudden, a day later, we see BTC SV with this huge boost of hash power. What happened there?
So there's a bit of a strategy here. So for every hash that's being hashed on Bitcoin Cash right now, you're not earning as much money as you would have been by hashing on BTC. So it's kind of like a sailing, with sailboats. If in a race, once you're in the front position, you just do exactly what the boat behind you is doing the whole way through, and they never have a chance to pass you that way. So that's what we're doing with our hash rate right now. We're making sure we always have more hash rate than the SV version. And so if they lower their hash rate, we'll lower our hash rate. If they increase their hash rate, we'll increase our hash rate. But we have to keep an eye on them and see where they're at. And so that's what you see going on. You'll notice that the hash rate of both SV and Bitcoin Cash kind of move in parallel, but there might be a slight lag from one to the other as we're watching them, because we want to earn as much money as we can by mining, but we also want to make sure we protect Bitcoin Cash. So we're prepared to do that for as long as we need to, but we don't need to have infinitely more hash rate than SV. We just need to have a little bit more hash rate than SV.
Do you think they may have played you by letting you go and mine BCH to get ahead in the hash power, while they filled the void in BTC and made money mining BTC? Basically, do you think you were played?
No, I think it's pretty clear that they didn't know what hit them. They had absolutely no idea what was in store. They were, you can talk a big game all day long, but at the end of the day, what happens, and the proof is in the actual actions that were taken. And the Bitcoin Cash community clearly, both in terms of hash rate and software and websites and all sorts of things out there, prefer the ABC and Bitcoin Unlimited versions over the SV versions. So it wasn't even close.
Okay, now when do we decide which chain won the war and which camp is the official new BCH chain? When do we decide which is the chain?
I think it's already been decided. So if it wasn't for Bitcoin ABC to begin with, Bitcoin Cash would have never existed. And it's still Bitcoin ABC at this point. So there was never any doubt in my mind at all. We knew what the hash rate was. We knew how much we needed. And we knew where the ecosystem stood and all the businesses. And we have Coinbase, Blockchain.info, Bitcoin.com, BitPay, all the exchanges. Everybody's lined up in a row in favor of Bitcoin Cash being Bitcoin Cash, which is ABC to begin with, and it's still ABC today.
So why are there hash wars now? If it's been decided that BTC ABC is the winner, why is there a hash war now? Surely if it's over, then this is the end of the war, right?
It should be, but we have people like Craig Wright out there claiming that he's going to attack it forever and reorg the chain and double spend exchanges and cause as much trouble as he possibly can for everybody. And I wish he'd grow up. He can go and play with his project and leave the rest of us alone with our projects. So, I wish him good luck, but please leave our project alone, Craig. We don't need people intentionally causing trouble for us.
Now, before the fork, Craig Wright threatened you and the market that he would create a huge sell-off of Bitcoin to fund this war, and it would drive the price down. Is this what he's actually doing?
Who knows? I don't know. I wish him good luck with all of his peaceful future endeavors, but I wish he'd leave Bitcoin Cash alone. And his entire track record in the space has been just a string full of broken promises. He's always promising something a couple months away, and when the time comes, he never delivers on it. So I don't put too much faith in the things that he says at this point.
Roger, great to have you back on the show. Amaury, I'm looking at you. Amaury, was there a big hash war or not?
Yeah, so what happened, there was a lot of, big talk and everything, especially from people like Craig, but at the end of the day, not much happened, right? It was like, we were promised a huge war, but at the end of the day, it was very disappointing on that front. So what happened is that the hash rate from, Enchain and CoinGeek left a way to mine BSV. Some other hash rate, filled in BCH coming from BTC because, that's essentially how the economics of it works. People on BCH, put a little extra more hash rate to make sure that everything is secure in a certain time, and the split happened, and now we have two coins.
Okay, now is Bitcoin ABC the winner in the war and effectively the holders of the new chain?
Yeah, so pretty much everybody is listing BCH as, it's not just ABC though, there is like BCHD and Bcash and various other implementation that have the same roadmap as a Speedprim as well. And it seems that this side is getting the BCH ticker by now.
Is there really a point in a hash war?
There was never really a point in the hash war. Like nobody, there was no war to win to begin with. If you have two node software that have incompatible consensus rules, you're gonna have a split no matter what. And there is no amount of hash that you can put in any of the chain for anything different to happen.
But isn't this a case of the chain with the most hash power and the most blocks mined keeping the BCH ticker?
Some people were claiming that, but at the end of the day, you cannot decide what people are calling what. Like words are something that is very bottom up, not top down. You cannot say, okay, well, you can decide for yourself. This has the most hash rate, so I'm going to call it BCH, but you cannot force everybody else to do that. And it seems that most people really don't want it of the roadmap that is proposed by BSV.
So what happens now to Dr. Craig Wright? Have we seen the back of him, or will he continue to fight, threaten, and even bring down the price of Bitcoin?
He's going to be threatening a lot, that's for sure. This kind of people is after attention, so he's going to do whatever it takes to get attention. So right now it seems that he's going after the Ripple community, XRP, and threatening lawsuits and stuff like that. He's going to try whatever it takes, and anytime he gets attention about something, he's going to do it more.
Amaury, this hash war is way bigger than just a BCH hash war. This is the first time that people with very deep pockets have threatened an attack on a proof of work chain. And this could be seen as a big test for the proof of work algorithm. Is this the biggest attack on a proof of work algorithm ever? Is proof of work indeed safe? Do you believe that we've proven that proof of work is a secure protocol that can't be attacked?
So I wouldn't call it a day now, but it seems like, it seems it's pretty much done at this point. It's not like, I wouldn't put 100% on it yet. It's like if you declare victory too soon. Like, there is this picture, very well-known picture with, I think it's George Bush on some, aircraft carrier that say, oh, we won, but we know that the war is still going on today. So I don't want to be that guy.
Okay, you say the war's not over yet. What could Craig Wright or anyone possibly do now to destabilize the chain? What worries you? Why are you being so cautious?
So The situation right now is such as I don't think there is any victory condition for BSV, but it's still possible because CoinGeek and Enchain have a lot of hash rate. It's still possible that they use this hash rate to try to disrupt the BCH chain. And we are working very closely with Exchange and other miners that are more friendly to make sure that doesn't happen. But they may try to do so, and they have, something like 3-4 exahash of their own, so they can probably do something if they try. We're going to do our best for that not to happen.
Amaury, if I could get Dr. Craig Wright on the show, what do you think he would say? What would he declare?
He would declare that he's the best and that he won, and that, if you don't like it, he's going to bankrupt you and bleed you to death, or some grand speech like that.
Okay, so on that note, what would Dr. Craig Wright say if we could get him on the show? Craig, there were disagreements between the two camps that couldn't be reconciled and that forced a chain split. Then there was going to be a hash war. Or was there a hash war?
Oh, there still is. But we're doing something that is known as persistence hunting. It's a technique where we're doing an endurance sort of attack. Now, we're going to support the original chain, but we're not going to waste a lot of money doing it. So we will move mining equipment back and forwards between BTC and Bitcoin. And as we're doing that, we earn money on BTC, which we then sell, which pays for our electricity. And at any point, no one knows whether we're moving hash rate over to BTC or we're seeking to reorg the chain. So what you'll find is whenever we remove some of our hash rate and start earning money, then the other side throws a whole lot of hash rate off BTC, costing them money, at sort of the ABC chain, and they burn a lot of money as we earn.
So Craig, let me get this straight. What you're saying is that for you, this is not an ego war, but you are playing this to actually make money. At what point do we declare that either Bitcoin ABC or Bitcoin SV is the new BCH?
Well, I still call it Bitcoin. We're following the original Bitcoin as of the white paper. We're actually going to return it more and more to there. We don't have people in the way blocking us anymore. So we are going to return it to Bitcoin 0.1. We're going to fulfill the original version of Bitcoin. We're going to get rid of a lot of the silly additional ideas where people thought it's really about drug trades and privacy and anarchy. And we're going to make it cash. Cash my grandmother will use. Cash that I'll be happy to give for the children to pay in a tuck shop.
Now, Craig, there were mails from you to Roger. There were also tweets where you threatened to dump Bitcoin down to $1,000. And you said that $1,000 doesn't bother you. Can we speculate based on that you are a big part of this market turmoil and that a big part of this market decline is because you're dumping Bitcoin to pay for the electricity?
Well, if we have to pay for more electricity because we're not earning as much, that means we sell BTC. So unfortunately, the market's very thin. And I mean, we aren't aiming to make the prices go down. That's never going to be the aim, because if we get more money, if we were to get 3 times as much in BTC exchange, we would actually be able to throw more hash at them the other way. So the reality is we're not seeking to push down the BTC price. That's not the goal. It's just a consequence.
Craig, there's been a lot of speculation about your relationship with Jihan. It seems that you were once friendly.
We bought machines off him in the past. I wouldn't say that we were friendly.
It seems now, though, that there's a big war, and this may actually all be about you and him.
Jihan wants to make this about a system to enable many, many coins to do the whole ICO thing, which is already starting to be shut down, which I predicted 2 years ago would happen. And worse than that, one of the things they want to build with Wormhole is a method to enable capital flight out of China. Now, I don't know about you, but the creation of a system that becomes more and more illegal is the last thing I want to do to get sort of global adoption of Bitcoin.
Okay, when does this movie end and everyone can go home and get on with their lives?
Well, I guess it's up to them in a way. If Jihan wants to get rid of Bitcoin SV and get off our chain and put replay protection in and do something so that it is no longer Bitcoin, in my opinion, then off he goes. And we'll compete based on the fact that we have a better business model. I mean, at peak, we achieved 1,500 transactions per second on our testing last night. We had the biggest block on any public blockchain ever achieved. So we're happy to keep scaling that. We've done 64. We're now going to do 128 megs. And then in the next 6 months, we're going to be opening up to a whole 512 or half a gigabyte blocks and scaling from there. Our aim is within 2 years, we'll be at a level that will take every single blockchain globally and have a bigger volume. We'll be able to take every transaction that Ethereum's ever done, every transaction on BTC, PayPal, which isn't even a blockchain, throw them all in together and without missing a blink, just process them.
Okay, I get that. Practically, when will you stop focusing on the hash war and focusing on creating a digital cash that everyone can use?
Oh, we haven't stopped. You don't seem to understand. We have a really big team. We have several developers for every person who develops ABC and every other iteration of the ABC chain. We're a big commercial company. We have people all around the world. So we haven't stopped. I have written a whole lot of papers that are being filed for patent. We've been told today that we've got another 3 patents being awarded. On top of that, we have new projects starting. We have all sorts of things. We haven't had a hiccup at all in any of the other projects that we're doing. All of this is happening at the same time.
I guess what I'm asking, and now I'm going to put it a lot more bluntly, if you guys are having hash wars and the hash wars are bringing down the market, when...
But they're not. They're bringing down the casino. See, this is where people go wrong. You seem to think that I care about the casino, that exchange trades and flipping coins matters. That's not a market. A market is use. And we're going to sell transaction volume. We're going to sell a commodity ledger. We're going to open up trade. And people are going to pay us not because they think about Bitcoin value, but because they want to use this ledger. We've already got potential sort of opportunities there that if we show the scale that we've been showing, and in 6 months we'll be where we need to be, that people are going to start using this for daily use. That's not just occasional sort of use or flipping from exchanges or anything.
Okay, now BTC, ABC have basically declared victory. They have the longest chain, they've mined more blocks. What do you say to that?
Germany declared victory in 1941.
But indeed, the war wasn't over. That's Dr. Craig Wright, and it seems like this war is also not over. That was super exhausting. Next up, we take a look at the recent moves by the SEC against ICOs in the United States. So stay tuned. The SEC came out guns blazing against 2 USA domiciled companies that conducted ICOs last year without having them registered as securities. Both Paragon and AirFox were hit with $250,000 fines, and probably worse, they need to undertake to compensate harmed investors who purchased tokens in the illegal offerings. Even though both companies consented to this, without admitting or denying the findings, the move is seen as a killer blow to the ICO market in the United States. The biggest fear here is that ICOs that raised capital when ETH prices were high may now have to return the money to investors. But since the ETH prices are now down, they won't have the money to return it, and they'll be forced into liquidation. Preston Byrne, you've been saying this would happen for a while. We finally had decisive action from the SEC. They came down on 2 specific ICOs, and they seem to have laid a precedent. Why is this such an important juncture?
So the crypto space has been waiting for a long time to get clarity from the SEC on some pretty basic questions. And one of those questions is how they treat your ordinary run-of-the-mill ICO that's going to be launched by your average ICO entrepreneur, as they were encountered in the wild quite frequently in 2016 and 17. So until recently, we didn't have any guidance on that point. And so now what we've seen is that they're taking a very conservative and traditional approach to regulating these schemes, much in line with the way that they regulated kind of wacky, crazy schemes in the 1970s. And that for all intents and purposes, these schemes have to either be registered as securities, or they have to be exempt from the registration requirement.
What does this mean for the crypto world?
So it means that it's not going to be so easy to launch a coin in the United States. So obviously, the U.S., although we like to think we're the only country in the world, we are not the only country in the world. But we do have very specific rules regarding the sale and dealing in securities within our borders. And so hitherto, it was thought that if you were going to sell ICO tokens in the U.S., it might not be subject to those rules. But because it's subject to those rules, you can expect that there's increased friction and increased amounts of compliance, and therefore increased cost associated with doing ICO deals in the United States.
Preston, do you think the SEC has now put a nail in the coffin and effectively excluded the USA from the ICO market? Or do you think that people will just conform with the securities laws?
Well, we have to be careful how we describe it. It's not that they've precluded ICOs from being registered. They've simply said that ICOs must be registered, or they must, benefit from an appropriate exemption. So exemptions include, for example, doing private placement deals, as we've seen with a contractual instrument known as a SAFT, or Simple Agreement for Future Tokens. That's under Regulation D. Another exemption, which is quite common and which I'm seeing frequently in practice, is Regulation S, where ICO issuers who are based abroad and have no U.S. touch points and don't intend to have any U.S. touch points are undertaking some significant compliance in order to avoid having U.S. touch points and therefore being subject to U.S. securities rules. So your options really are find one of those exemptions which applies and get a lawyer who will give you a very conservative opinion about that, or go directly to the SEC and ensure that your token is registered and that you're making the appropriate disclosures on a quarterly basis.
Now, what about those ICOs that raised money in 2016 and 2017? And specifically, those companies that were registered in the USA but not registered with the SEC. What kind of risk do they face now?
Depends on they face a lot of risks. How they deal with them is really the more interesting question. Obviously, as an entrepreneur, you can, when faced with a compliance issue, you can do a couple things. One of them is that you can go to the SEC, you can throw your hands up and say, mea culpa, let's fix this. In the alternative, there are options such as rescission, which is basically making your investors whole again, winding up the whole scheme and calling it a day. You could restructure the deal and try to get it offshore if you haven't issued tokens yet, or you could dig in your heels and fight. Which generally speaking for startups isn't really advisable, but for other companies that shall remain nameless at this juncture that have made hundreds of millions of dollars from the practice of selling tokens, it may be worth their while to actually go and play this out in the courts and see if they can't get the American precedents distinguished. So what makes sense for any individual company will vary on a company by company basis, but for most companies the solution is really going to be to go to the SEC. And what has happened here is they've really given a last opportunity, a last warning to the crypto space. Look, there's an option to get out with some reasonable fines and a reasonable way to compliance, but you have to come to us and you have to volunteer that.
Preston, net, is this a positive thing or a negative thing?
Depends on what your game is and what game you're playing. If you're a short-term trader, I think we've seen some price action in the markets, which I have to imagine is related to what's going on in the U.S. regulatory environment. So if that's your game, then no, this isn't positive, and we can really look forward to a very long bear market where a lot of the better minds and developers and entrepreneurs in the space are going to be spending a lot of time, energy, and money engaged in legal compliance issues, which is a huge waste of an entrepreneur's time, but unfortunately a necessary one. If, however, you're saying, listen, we think that we've got to get this stuff into the institutions, then this does look like a positive signal because we are overdue a cleanup. Last year was a crazy, crazy ride. And, as a consequence, we had people with a lot of crazy ideas doing a lot of crazy and very stupid things. And now we're going to be suffering the consequences of all of that excess. However, at the conclusion of that exercise, we are going to have a much cleaner space in the U.S., which regulators and institutions are more comfortable with. And I think that if you're playing a 10-year time horizon, that's a positive sign. That's a positive sign.
Preston, you mentioned that people could take the SEC to court. Does this mean that the SEC is not actually making the law, but simply enforcing their interpretation of the law, and that it could actually be overturned by the courts?
Yeah, so the SEC, that's absolutely right. The SEC is a law enforcement agency. However, it is an enormously powerful law enforcement agency that has the backing, the full backing of the might of the American government behind it. So they have effectively infinite resources and time. So for an entrepreneur, yes, you could conceivably fight the SEC in court. You'd have to ask yourself really, as with the limited time that you have on earth and your limited ability to raise funds, whether you want to be spending millions and millions of dollars engaged in complicated federal securities litigation with a regulator, and whether that's the way you want to spend your life. So for some companies, that equation may make sense. For most of them, it will not. And there's no guarantee of success. It's, very fog of war type situation. When you go into the courts, you don't know what the outcome is going to be. So people will have to measure the relative, the risks and the costs incurred or to which they will be exposed if they follow that course of action.
Next up, I've got Anthony Pompliano. And in your opinion, what was the catalyst for the recent market collapse? Is it the hash wars on the one side, or is it the SEC action on the other side?
Yeah, I was telling somebody earlier today that I don't think it really matters, right? So there's a whole bunch of kind of conspiracy theories as to what happened, right? Is it the Bitcoin Cash issue? Is it early investors in 2017 who are now reaching their cost basis? They start dumping. Could it be something as simple as people are selling their crypto positions to buy Christmas gifts, right? It could be a whole host of different things. I tend to think that the more important thing to focus on is the longer term trend. We've been in a bear market. We're going to continue to stay in this bear market. I think a lot of the technicals and the historical analysis show that we've got a ways to fall still, right? In August, I wrote a letter that said we were at $6,500 and we could fall 50% or more from there. And so it still looks like, 3,000, 3,500 is on the table. And if we fall all the way there, I think that's when we're really going to see, the true blood in the streets. And we'll kind of see how, market participants react to that.
Okay, so you're calling more blood on the streets. You're saying this is not capitulation and certainly not the end. And you also published an article this week about hedge funds and whether or not they could survive this. I think what you were saying is that in the current environment, most hedge funds who raised money late last year and entered the market are down a hell of a lot from their peak. And in order for those funds to make money and break even, they're essentially going to need the market to go up 3 or 4x. And that's highly unlikely. Is that what you were saying?
So there's a couple of elements here, right? So one is it's important to say that not every hedge fund is underwater. There are a couple, right, which I won't name, but there are a couple that are actually up on the year. And they've done a very good job of managing risk and shorting and doing all kinds of things. So not everyone's in trouble. But there are a very large amount that are in trouble, and many of them are in their long tail, right? These guys manage less than $20 million in assets. They're usually young, inexperienced fund managers. And there's two things that go into this. One is either they started at a bad time, right? They started in late 2017 or beginning of 2018, and the markets just ripped down on them. And so they just have taking massive losses, right? So that's not good. The second thing, and the more important thing, though, is this high watermark issue. So the way a high watermark works is in each investment period, let's say in a 12-month period, fund managers are trying to accumulate profits. At the end of that investment period, let's say December 2017, what they do is they apply a performance fee to the profits. So they take 20% of any profits for the year. Now, in order for them to earn that performance fee in the following investment period, in 2018, they have to be above that high watermark, the high watermark being the highest net asset value of the fund in a previous investment period. So if you started with $1 million fund in 2017, it ran up to $10 million. You took your performance fee. Now, if all of a sudden you've drawn down 50, 60, 70%, and you're in the $5, $4, $3 million range, you can't take your performance fee as the fund manager until you get back above the $10 million high watermark. Now, the reason why it's important is because the incentive for fund managers is that performance fee. And so if all of a sudden they realize I've got to 2, 3, 4x my fund in order to get back to be eligible to get my performance fee, many of them are just going to say that's too long. That's 12, 18, 24 months away. I'm not going to stick around for that long to get there.
And essentially, they will need to return the money or close down.
Yeah, because they're not going to get the incentive fee, right? So they're better off actually returning capital to investors and then waiting and either go work at another fund or start a fund in the future. Now, the one saving grace that these investors have, the fund managers have, is if they raise new capital, right, in this investment period, that is not subject to that high watermark issue. The problem is they're not going to be easy to raise that capital if you're taking on massive losses at the same time, right? So I think that a lot of these young, inexperienced fund managers haven't realized this issue yet. But come end of year when they're expecting a bonus or a performance fee and they don't get it, they're going to start dumping these funds and returning capital to investors. I think it's going to create more selling pressure.
That doesn't paint a pretty picture at all. Now, my next two guests haven't been painting pretty pictures for a while. Both Tone Vace and Vinnie Lingham have been calling the market down all the way. They've been targeted and even been abused on social media, but they have been right all the way. So love them or love to hate them, I have both of them here with me tonight. Tone, I'm starting with you. So Tone, when I called you, I couldn't wait to see if there was a big smile on your face when your price predictions came true, despite all the abuse that you got on Twitter. Are you happy?
I'm actually not that happy. This is one of those instances where I wish I was wrong because I remain a hodler of Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin is too important of a technology. I think that when you're holding Bitcoin for its properties of being unconfiscatable and censorship-resistant value transfer, you just don't want to go in and out of it. If you're a trader and you're a speculator, sure. But if you actually believe in a long-term future of Bitcoin, you're hodling Bitcoin, you're holding on to that Bitcoin. And I'm holding on to my Bitcoin through the bear market. So it's great that I got it right. I've been calling for sub $5,000 prices probably since the middle of January. And it finally happened. And right now is very interesting. It's I still think there's going to be a little more pain before it's all over. People remain optimistically bullish, and I'm not sure why.
Tone, when we met in Miami earlier this year, you called the Bitcoin price down below $4,000 and even as low as $1,500. And well, this week it actually hit it. Let's listen to the interview we did in Miami. Tone, are you convinced that we're out of the bear market territory after this bounce?
Unfortunately, I am not. I am not yet convinced that the bear market is over. I am being overly cautious, perhaps, but there is a difference between speculative trading and actual investing. From a speculative trading perspective, sure, there is always money to be made on upswings in a bear market. But from an investor outlook, I would rather not risk it at this moment. And even as a trader like myself, I'd rather time trades to the downside in a bear market than get caught on the wrong side of a bull trade in a bear market.
Now, Tone, earlier when I was speaking to you earlier this year, you said that Bitcoin can go down to $2,500, maybe even $3,000. It went down to about $6,000. Now it's bounced up and we've been over $9,000 and even close to $10,000. Are you still calling $2,500 or $3,000?
I'm not calling that it will happen, but I'm still very, very cautious that there is a very decent probability that we can go that low. I am expecting lower prices than 6,000 even as we speak today. My highest low target is around 4,900. My lowest low target is that 1,300 area. And I still am not convinced that we are out of those woods yet.
What would convince you that we're out of the woods? What price level are you looking for? What volume are you looking for? What line in the chart are you looking for to tell us that we're out of the woods?
Sure. So I would need to see a higher high right now to at least $12,000. Then I would need to see a pullback down that does not come close to 6. So a perfect situation at this moment for me to be bullish would be a move to 11 or 12,000, then a fall to around 8, 9,000, the current levels we are at now, and then with volume start to go up from that level. That's the only situation that would convince me that 6,000 is in. The other situation that would convince me that 6,000 is in is if we continue go straight up and we're breaking 17, 18,000, getting close to the all-time highs. That would be unfortunate. I may lose some following if that's the situation we're in, but as a responsible trader and investor, that's how I look at prices.
Now, Tone, is this buying time? Have we seen capitulation? The market's down 30% since Friday. Is this blood?
I don't think so, but I can certainly see a nice rally. I can see a rally from here, from this $4,200 area. I can see us going back to 6,000, but I don't see 10,000 in the near future. I can certainly see the price bouncing from this $4,200 area all the way up to 6,000, the area of the breakdown. But I still think we will see prices in the low 3,000s before the bear market fully ends sometime next year.
Tone, does your analysis take time into account, or do you only look at prices?
I'm always looking at both time and price. A lot of traders forget about time. Time is very important. For this bear market, I had 3 price targets: 5,000, 3,000, 1,500. I also had 3 time targets: the current time of late October, early November, early summer of next year, and late summer of next year. The bear market would have ended right now if the price would have fell all the way to 1,500, but the price held up fairly well. I'm now expecting the bear market to last until the beginning of through the winter and into the spring. And I think the best case scenario at this point is a bottom around 3,000 sometime in the spring, sometime in March, April, May. And if that doesn't work, then the bear market could last all the way into late summer.
All the way from his new home in the heart of San Diego, I've got Vinny Lingham. Vinny, have we reached capitulation yet? Is this the bottom?
If you look at the market psychology curve, this is really the despair part of the cycle, where capitulation hasn't yet happened. We're not at the point where we've given up on crypto as a market. It's just we're in despair. The price is lower than it's ever been in a year, and this is what I warned about. And I think we're getting close. And no one wants to believe that 5,800 wasn't the bottom. People were saying it's a double bottom and it was a triple bottom, whatever else. And the market couldn't sustain 5,800, and it was very clear to me anyway. And I think we're in the despair phase. Are we close to the bottom? Yeah, probably. We're probably close.
Vinny, you say close to the bottom. Bitcoin has been at $4,000 this week on some exchanges. Where is the bottom?
No one knows. If you'd ask me my best guess, somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000. But that's just the best guess. It could go lower. It might be higher. But it's not 500, obviously. But I think the current 4,000 level is getting closer.
And what are you basing this on? Is it charts, gut feel, fundamentals? What are you basing this on?
All of the above. I mean, I'm using all of that. Market fundamentals, the fact that there are way too many companies in the space that are not generating profits, revenues, money, that have to burn crypto in order to survive. So they have to sell crypto to generate fiat. There's only so much fiat money coming into the system every month. And so when you have more sellers than buyers, what happens? Price drops. This is basic economics. This is not advanced stuff. But when you have 50 to 100,000 people working in an industry that makes no money, this is what happens. And this is what I warned about last year. Like, the bubble and bust cycle is dangerous, and it causes a lot of hardship for a lot of people. And we can't build crypto on a base and foundation of sand. It's got to be rock solid, and it just isn't yet. And I'm a big believer in crypto for the long term. Long term, I think we're going to be in market caps in the trillions. But right now, we're going to have to take some pain because we got over exuberant.
Vinny, what caused this latest decline? We lost 1/3 of the market value in 3 days. Do you think it's the hash wars? Was it the SEC action? What caused this market decline?
I think there were a number of factors here. I think those two are definitely it, but also just basic market fundamentals. There's, if you look at the number of people in the industry, 50 to 100,000 people that need $1 billion worth of crypto of fiat per month just to sort of pay the bills. Where does that money come from? You can't have a situation where there's between 50 and 100,000 people every month working that need to pay their landlords, pay for food, pay for rent, and these companies have to sell crypto in order to pay the bills. So unless there are buyers on the other side of the transaction, this is it's not sustainable. And so we have to wait for the crypto economy to effectively shrink down to a size that is sustainable.
And Vinny, is there any catalyst that could bring new money into the market to cover the 1 billion deficit? I mean, we've got Backed, we've got Fidelity. They're all going to bring in money, but can they bring enough money into the market?
So remember, the issue with crypto right now is that everyone's expecting institutional money to come in, but it's not institutional grade investment. When I say that, people who are running, and I know these people who are running these funds, billions of dollars and hundreds of millions of dollars of funds, they don't like risk, okay? They have very cushy jobs. They play their golf on Fridays. They have very nice lives. Their goal is to protect wealth, not to risk it. So them putting money into crypto, like if they make an extra 10 or 15% on the portfolio, it doesn't matter to them personally. They're making money for wealthy people, okay? But if they lose money, they lose their jobs. So they're not going to be taking risks. And this whole notion of institutional money to run in when crypto hasn't proven itself, we're still having a disagreement over the store of value versus utility, sort of transactional utility hypothesis for Bitcoin and for all these cryptos. Like we got to get our shit together. Can I square in line?
Now, Vinny, Anthony Pompliano, who was on the show a little bit earlier, published a report this week, and in the report he claims that most crypto funds in the space entered the space last year and invested during the highs. Inevitably, most of those funds are now way down. Now, what Anthony says is that since those funds need the market to go up 2x, 3x, and maybe even 4x to break even and to start earning fees, it may be easier for them to just close down and return the money. Now, you're a partner at Multicoin Capital, and I've seen the Multicoin reports, and even though they've performed better than the other funds, they're also still down for the year. Do they fall into this category?
Well, I can say with a huge degree of certainty that even though the market has been down and everyone's been affected, I think Multicoin has probably been affected the least. And we've taken very conservative positions in the market. We really have not been affected by this drop at all. And so we've been very, very good, I think, at managing the risk around the money. And the numbers that we've put out there are not, it beats the market by a significant number of points. Even though the market is down, we were not down as much as the market.
So Vinny is smiling, and he claims that the funds in Multicoins are safer. Nico, it's bloody out there, but what are the charts saying?
Yeah, so it's actually quite interesting. I'm looking back to the bear market back in 2014 and 2015, and I'm looking at a retracement level that was very key. What I've done here is I've taken off the wicks on these candles here and added a line to filter out the emotional noise from the market and more focus on the closes. If we go back to the last bear market, we can see that we closed just above this 0.7 Fibonacci level. I think it's a very key level, and we take a look at the market now. We are not far off of it. As a matter of fact, we just came close off of it last night, and we are looking to hold it. If we don't hold it, then we're looking at real capitulation levels down at 3,000. But I am looking for a bottom here. And there's a number of reasons why. That Fibonacci level is a great place to watch for, considering our last bear market closed at that. And then also a number of things with volume analysis. If we take a look here at the OBV, we can see that it's actually been divergent for quite a while, and that the bottom has been forming. I know these last couple weeks seem extremely bearish, but this is a good thing. We did the same exact thing at the bottom of our last bear market. So with rising volume levels, that key Fibonacci level, and also a bottomed out RSI on the weekly. What the RSI is a relative strength index, and it measures oversold and overbought levels of the market. We are very close to bottoming out on that. I would like to see some chop action throughout this range and ultimately find a bottom. I am watching for the closes on our candles. I'm not so worried about the wicks because, again, that's just emotional noise.
Okay, but there's a big distinction between the last 2 weeks and the last 5 days. In the last 2 weeks, the markets were hovering at around $200 billion. But in the last 5 or 4 days, we've lost 33% of the market value. Is this not the proverbial panic stage that shakes out all the weekends and we can now go back and start playing real crypto?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a major shakeout. I still don't think we've hit capitulation levels. 3,000 is my capitulation level. Anything under this, I think this current price level, I think we're going to remain down there for a very long time. If we do end up hitting that capitulation level I'm looking at, I think we remain there for several months. Anything below that, any catastrophic scenario, we remain down there for years. Commodities are dragged out when they hit these low levels for decades, and I expect the same for Bitcoin. I don't think it's a reasonable conclusion to say that we will hit those levels. I think we should hold this pretty well, but as with all technical analysis, you have to stay fluid, and as the market changes and more data points come in, you take those and form your conclusion. But what I'm seeing now is this 4,000 range being heavily defended. The first time we passed through it, we saw massive amounts of institutional volume, especially around the 4,800 area. I am looking... that was on our last bull run. I am looking for this area to be heavily defended. We could get some wicks down, but as far as weekly closes go, I definitely am looking for a close above this key Fibonacci level here.
Nick, when you look at the charts, is there anything positive or is it all doom and gloom?
Well, I mean, I'm positive about Bitcoin even, considering, we just had a major sell-off. I think this is good and healthy for the markets. I am still looking for a lower bottom on Ethereum, but one coin I am looking at in particular is Stellar. It's continued to create higher lows, and there's massive amounts of volume flowing into it. I do look at Stellar as a company, not so much a cryptocurrency. Ripple also. Both assets have been receiving a lot of attention and a lot of capital flow into them. So I am looking for Stellar to eventually break this last top and create a mountain essentially take us to newer highs.
Nick, I know you're avoiding this question, but what do you make of XRP holding so strong? I mean, earlier this week, XRP decided that it's going to have nothing to do with this market collapse, and it started acting as somewhat of a stable coin.
I wouldn't necessarily call it a stable coin. I mean, it is moving inverse to the rest of the market, as is Stellar. Look, Ripple is so centralized. Stellar is so centralized. It's better to look at it as a company. There's money to be made in Ripple, regardless of your feelings on it. Obviously, there's major moves. As a day trader, I try to look for these major moves, regardless of my feelings and emotions on a cryptocurrency. Yes, it's built on a blockchain, but I think there's a big future for both. I do feel that Stellar has more growth opportunities than Ripple. They're both making major moves behind the scenes, partnerships and things like that. However, I do feel that Stellar will outperform Ripple over the next 12 months.
Now, Nick, when I met you in Miami earlier this year, you called ETH to 120, and I was less than polite when I told you that it's highly unlikely. But now I need to eat my words because ETH is heading towards 120.
Yeah, 120 is inevitable at this point. We're not too far above that as we speak. There was a major sell-off last night. Look, Ethereum will still have growth, but I don't think it'll have the growth it had on the last bull run because there's less ICOs being built on it. As for the scenario now, I am looking for a 109 to 120 as our next potential bottom. Again, as we approach, as with all technical analysis, as the conditions change, I may adjust that target. But that's what I'm seeing right now. I've been eyeballing that since we broke under 400. The last time I bought ETH was at 300 and rode it up to 1250, sold there, and I've been looking for this 120 entry as soon as we broke that 400 range.
With all the focus on the market capitulation, it's easy to forget that the real use case for crypto should lie in the spending and not in the speculation. And with Black Friday just around the corner, an Israeli company has launched an initiative that should put crypto on the Black Friday retail map. CoinMama has created an initiative called Crypto Sunday that is designed to highlight companies that are accepting crypto and allow them to create specials that are only available to customers that pay with crypto. With me on the line, I have Asaf Shulman, CEO of CoinMama. So how does Crypto Sunday actually work?
So Crypto Sunday is an initiative that was conceived by CoinMama, but it's open for all. It's basically a website, it's cryptosunday.org, that is, lists all the merchants that accept crypto as a payment method. There's specific discounts that are, related for people to make their payment using crypto. It's anyone from Microsoft to Dell to Expedia and Playboy.com. There's a lot of very well-known brands that accept crypto, and I think many people will be surprised.
So Asaf, it's a platform that allows merchants that accept crypto to offer spenders preferred deals for spending crypto, and essentially drive people to spend and adopt crypto for what it was intended. How do you update the website?
So the information is coming from the merchants themselves. They can submit specific deals, for Crypto Sunday, or it's just part of their sort of Black Friday, Cyber Monday festive weekend that they've originally planned for. But it's just to raise. I guess the whole point is to raise awareness, as an industry, as an ecosystem for crypto as a means of payment, and encourage people to actually spend crypto and buy goods.
So Asaf, it does sound like it's a really amazing initiative that could go a long way to get crypto adoption. But I guess the question on our viewers' mind is, what's in it for CoinMama?
So, again, CoinMama is all about, we feel that, if the tide, goes up, then, everybody sort of benefits from that. And, there's no commercial incentive for CoinMama. We just want to raise awareness for crypto as a whole. We are proud to be sort of behind this initiative, but at the end of the day, if it's just like Cyber Monday succeeds, you don't know who's behind Cyber Monday. But as a whole, I think the whole industry gains from such initiatives, and we're just proud to be leading this.
Asaf, it really does sound like an honest initiative, and particularly because it sounds like it's open source and really in the spirit of blockchain. If our viewers want to get more information, where can they go?
So you just head off to cryptosunday.org, and there's a very detailed list of all the merchants that accept crypto as a payment method. You can sort it out by categories and by the specific coins that they accept, as a means of payment. And if you don't have crypto and you want to get crypto, then there's specific sort of promotions there as well. So CoinMama, to celebrate this day, actually drops its own fees, during November 25th, so you can get crypto at market rates and just run with it and get great discounts on all those sort of e-commerce platforms.
So that has to be one of our biggest shows to date. Vinny, Tone, The Pump, Roger, Nick, Craig Wright, all on one show. Now, as you know, I never ever make recommendations on my own show, but tonight I'm going to give you a tip. If you're not trading the volatility or looking to actively buy in this market, then don't look at the prices at all. If you do, it's inevitable that your emotions will take over and make some really bad decisions. And that, my friends, is the only time you'll ever get a tip from me on my own show. I'll see you again next week. Until then, I'll be on Twitter at CryptoManRun, and you should stay away from the markets.
Crypto Trader is proudly brought to you by Element, a full-service investment bank for the digital token capital markets.